Today, I want to show you how business owners can put their money to work in two places at once, and how business owners are using the system to grow their money in the background while they also use it to build their business. So, I'm going to walk you through a real illustration that I built for a 36-year-old who owns his own plumbing business. And he realized that making good money and being financially secure, they're not the same thing. And on paper, he was successful, over 1 million in revenue. He has good income. He's growing a team. But behind the scenes, everything was depending on him, which was causing him a lot of stress. And what we did is we helped him reposition his savings. They were just sitting idle in his account. We helped him move his tied up capital into a private system that would help him leverage his funds, and he could use it to expand his business while also protecting his family. Most people would think he was doing this mainly to help with his retirement, but honestly, that didn't really have much to do with his decision. The main thing that triggered this was a hospital visit. And before I get into that, I'm going to share a quick story about Brad and who he is. Brad is a 36-year-old. He owns a plumbing business. He has 6 W-2 employees. He has 3 trucks on the road every day. And last year he did about 1.4 million in revenue, and he paid himself around $280,000. Now, if you met him, you'd think he's doing really well and he has a solid business growing, and he does. He's very proud of what he built. He built his company from scratch. He started as an apprentice. He said he put all of his time in, took every late night call, crawled through more attics than he could count. He worked the weekends, and then he was starting to hire slowly, and that's when his business started to grow over time. But what he realized was that even now, even with 6 employees, he was still the engine of his business. He's the one customers ask for. He's the one who closes the bigger jobs. He's the one that jumps in when something goes sideways. So even though he owns the business, he felt like the business still ran through him, which in a lot of cases it did. Now, here's where everything shifted because it was the beginning of December. He had 2 pretty big invoices that didn't clear yet. And one of his techs quit on him, and then one of his trucks needed a transmission. The saying, when it rains, it pours. The shop called him to tell him that all the fixes for his truck were around 6 grand. And then to top that off, he had to pay payroll that same week, which is around $18,000. So when he opened his banking app, he saw about $95,000 sitting there in his business account. But that's a lot of money. But he's like, that's not all profit. That was his cushion. That was the money that he set away in case of a rainy day. That's the what if something breaks fund. And that same week, his wife calls him and she says that she doesn't feel good. She was pregnant at the time. They went to the hospital just to be safe. Everything turned out okay. But he told me that he was sitting in that hospital chair and he was thinking a lot about the growth of his business. And the biggest thing he kept asking himself was, if I'm out for a month, what happens to the business? And he said a lot of what he was playing in his head, he didn't really like the answers to, because yes, he has employees, but he was still the one calling the shots, running the show. If he's not there, revenue slows down. If revenue slows down, payroll gets tight. And if payroll ever misses, that's obviously not even about stress at that point. He was more concerned about his reputation. He built his business from scratch, and he built his business based on the name that he built for himself. So that was really the moment he realized all of his money was just tied to the business. And then he said he came across one of my videos about a week later. And my video was explaining how a lot of business owners were making good money, but they still felt like everything could fall apart if something went wrong. So that's when he messaged me and he's like, hey, I make good money, but I don't really feel financially stable. And after we had a conversation, we realized one thing. And the main problem was he didn't have a money problem. He had a structure problem. All of his capital was either sitting idle, it was either trapped away somewhere, or it was tied to the business. So the first thing we did was go through where his money was, and we figured out what was just sitting there and just not working for him. And what we did is we put a system in place called the Shift System. And the Shift System helps you structure your money, harness tax-free growth, increase your wealth, fund your future, while also transferring a legacy to your family. So we took a look at his situation and we started to restructure. And we looked at the 30K sitting in savings, the 50K sitting in that old IRA, the excess cushion that he had in his business account beyond what he was, realistically even needing at that moment. None of that money was working. All it was doing was waiting. And unfortunately, this is a really big mistake that most people make. We were taught to save money, but we were never actually taught how to grow our money. So if you take a look at this, you'll see the same 30K doing two completely different things. If you look at the 30K that's sitting idle in a savings account at about 1.5% of growth, all of his growth is also taxed. The interest that's earned is very little. And in this same account over 20 years, he'll have about $40,000 in it. He has no death benefit. He has no living benefits. Now you look at the same $30,000 sitting somewhere else with an average of around 6 to 8% growth rate. He's not taxed on any of his gains. He's protected from all of any market losses. He can borrow money at a lower rate than what his account is even growing at. He has protection for his family. He has protection, God forbid something happens like some sort of sickness or disability. He'll be protected. And catch this, the growth over 20 years would be $96,000. So that's a big difference, right? It's not a matter of what you're doing with your money, and it's not a matter of saving your money, but it's a matter of where you're saving your money. Because this is the same money, but sitting in two different places with two very different outcomes. So one has growth that is taxed each year with no leverage, and the 30K can only do one job. Nothing passes to his family beyond his account balance, and one earns minimal interest while inflation reduces its value. And then it all shifts because instead you can have that same 30K grow inside an index, but never have to deal with any market crashes. So your money is always protected. You can borrow against it. So you can fund investments, cover a slow month, or in Brad's case, get a new truck. Your growth isn't taxed, and your 30K can grow inside your policy while also working somewhere else. Now, in one scenario, you have about $10,000 in growth over 20 years if you just do nothing and just keep it sitting in an account. In another scenario, you have about $155,000 over the 30 years of growth, and it's non-taxable. This is all tax-free growth, plus benefits for your family and plus living benefits in case God forbid something happened to you. So the question is, if you had the choice to choose one of these places to put your money, where would you choose to put it? And then Brad started to realize how much this policy could help him because he realized next year he needed another truck. Brad then started to realize how much this strategy could help him because he realized next year he needed a new truck. The old Brad would have drained the operating account or gone to the bank and started the whole approval process for a loan. However, this time is very different. And it's funny because he asked me to clarify just one more time. And I had these same questions myself until I got my own policy and I saw how it actually worked. But he's like, so you're saying when I need a truck next year, I can just borrow against what I have available? And I said, yes, that's the whole point of this. And that's when he had his aha moment. He couldn't wrap his head around the fact that he wasn't applying for anything. He didn't need a credit check. He didn't need anyone else's approval. He realized that now he can have his money working in two places at once. He can invest his money in a truck that will only lead to more revenue for his business while still having his money growing for him in the background. And I had to assure him it is really that simple. Because once most people realize how this works, their head starts to turn because this is what finally gives us control over our money. It's his money in his account. He's just accessing it without needing to get confirmation from a bank and draining his current savings and his account. So after we put this plan in place for him, he realized that this wasn't even about the truck anymore. It was the fact that he was starting to build his own structure, his own reserve. He was starting to build his own system. Instead of him relying on the bank with his funds that can shrink, and instead of him needing to park his money in a checking account earning nothing, or instead of him hoping everything clears in time and no emergencies pop up, he's now building something that functioned like his own bank. And as a business owner, this can change everything. So he's now set up to borrow for the truck, and he's ready to expand his business without all of the added financial stress. And that's the biggest thing that changed for him, was how he approached the new business opportunity that arise, which in the past kept him stuck. And now he can kind of do it without even having to worry about it. So he stopped operating like the business owner that kind of crossed his fingers and hoped that nothing broke week to week. He started operating like someone who now has options for his business. He was thriving, knowing that he didn't have to deal with extra expenses that would also drain his bank account. And that even though he borrowed against it, his full balance continued compounding like he never touched it. His money was working for him in two places at once. And that's when he understood the leverage that the system provided. So he can still work just as hard, but he didn't feel like he was one bad month away from losing everything. So for the first time in his life, he was not just hustling and surviving, but he was setting up his business to win along with protecting his future for his family. So our conversation changed his mindset, but what really mattered was seeing the structure in black and white. So I want to show you the exact plan that we built for him. So here's Brad's policy. You'll notice that he'll be funding his policy with about $50,000 for the next 7 years. This is something that he's already saving. He already has $30,000 sitting idly. He has another $98,000 sitting in his business account doing nothing, not to mention the other funds he has in his IRA. So this was a comfortable number that he knew he could put away each year because he's doing that now. But the problem is that his funds right now are just sitting there, and we know that when that happens, it doesn't move, it doesn't grow. So he put in $50,000, and by year 2, he has access to about $71,000 of that right away. And we already planned for him to take out $25,000 because he knew he needed a truck. And here's what's different about this, because if his money was just sitting in a bank account and he had $60,000 sitting idle, when he goes and buys his truck, his savings dips to about $35,000 because he has to take the 25 out. That's what happens when you have to buy anything. And that was a struggle that he kept seeing in his business. But with this strategy in place, he takes $25,000 out, and instead his money stays in the same place. His account is still growing as if he took nothing out of it. And he still has access to about 71,000 of it to use right now. So now he can take his money out and it can still grow as if he's never touched it. And he still has access to the money that's in this column right here. And one of the main reasons Brad put this in place in the first place was for him to be able to leverage his money. And he wanted to use it for business expenses. Next year, he mentioned that he wanted to start some marketing, maybe run some ads, do some branding, and he wanted to pull some money out of here to help him fund it. So you'll notice year 3, he's taking around $10,000 to help, pay for some of the marketing and the branding for his business. And one of the biggest things that he realized, him and his wife have been wanting to buy an investment property in the last several years, but they were always scared to wipe out his funds. Now with this, it's possible, because you'll notice here, year 5, he has access to about $225,000 of his money. That's more than enough for a down payment on a new property. And he said him and his wife have been wanting to do this for a while, but they haven't been comfortable enough to pull the trigger. And now with this, they're going to be ready. He was even talking about maybe doing it even sooner than here, but he says now he has options, and now he doesn't have the fear of what happens if I buy an investment property, I will liquidate myself, and now I have no funds for my business. All of that changes here. So aside from all of the things that he can do right now while he's working and earning and building a future for his family, this also has a retirement strategy in place. So if you look here, when he turns 60, he's going to be getting income. And he's going to be getting $90,000 every single year until he's 85 years old. And by the time he's 85 years old, he's going to have close to $1 million in his policy that he can leave to his family when something happens. Most people take out life insurance and they have to pay it for the rest of their life, or they have to pay it till they're 65. And even then, they still don't have full access to their money. What we put together for Brad was a strategy. Now, let me go back. What we put together for Brad was a strategy that he's only putting his money away for the next 7 years, right? He's only funding this for 7 years. He's not paying this for the rest of his life. He's not paying this till he's 65 years old. And we did this strategically because we know he's going to be hustling and grinding in his business for the next 7 years. And he didn't want to commit to something for the next 20 to 30 years. So if he does choose to put anything after 7 years, then all of these numbers just increase. They'll look even better. But his policy is not dependent on him needing to do that, like what most people's policies look like. If they stop paying, their policy lapse, and now they don't get any of the funds that they put in. This is completely different. This is what brings you the flexibility. This gives you the options, and this is the security that this brings. This is a game changer for most business owners like Brad, like myself. This is what the wealthy people already do, but they don't tell people like us how to do it. And the last thing I want you to recognize here is that by age 85, he would have put a total of $350,000 in his policy, but he would have received almost $2.4 million, 2.3, almost $2.4 million he gets back. And when he passes, if he passes at age 85, he gets back close to $1 million, $961,000. And if he passes away when he's 89, he leaves them $1 million. You'll notice the numbers here, right? It goes all the way up to age 95, and it goes even further than that. But look at this. He still has so much money left to give his family, while he also capitalizes and doubles, triples, quadruples, 5x, 6x is his money. So this is created based on your own finances. You may not save $50,000 a year. That's okay. This strategy works with whatever you save, whatever you spend consistently, and then we put something in place for you from there. You may be looking at this and realize your business puts away even more than that per year, and your policy could look even greater than this. But the most important thing is figuring out exactly your situation. Get your policy designed properly. Get your policy funded properly, because you can't just sit with anyone and get something like this done. So if this is something that you want to see for yourself, you can schedule a call with the link below, and we can see exactly how we can implement the shift system in your life too.